when the flooding happened, we did a lot of work together, engaged a lot of policymakers. I want to know from him, 10 years on, with all the activism, are we making the right changes, or we've rather retrogressed? And if so, what should we do? Faisal says that on that day I was at Circle Tiptoe Lane in the morning before the rain started. If I had delayed any further, I would have been a casualty. Daniel says we haven't taken any lesson from that. We haven't learned anything. We look so comfortable doing the usual thing until something happens. We need to do better. And Denny says the situation is still the same for me. We need to put adequate measures in place to curb such occurrences in the future. Tony Asare is an architect and the president of the Ghana Institute of Architects. Good morning, Tony. Welcome to this morning show.
Morning, Kudu, and good morning to all the listeners.
I hope you are well.
I'm fine, thank you.
You are keen. You are a keen follower of our urban issues, our spatial planning, and related matters. June 3, 2015 to June 3, 2025. What has changed? Your thoughts so far? We've seen a lot of these things still happening.
Kudu, I think we haven't had much change in the construction industry. Our etiquettes when it comes to urban management, behavioral change that most of us have been talking about. But if there is anything, it's just gotten worse.
Tony, can you hear me? I seem to have lost
you. Yes, I can hear you.
Yes,
yes.
Please go ahead. I lost.
Yes.
I lost.
Sorry. So I was saying that nothing much has changed. Our behavior towards managing our environment, the kind of construction that we do, and even when it comes to our urban management, smart management, development, and everything, I don't think much has changed. That if there is anything, it's just gotten worse.
Tony, we lost 150 people on that day. In fact, more than 150 people. We lost property. Our lives were changed. Our daily activities were thrown off course. 10 years on, nothing has changed. Who should we hold responsible for the dystopia we find ourselves in?
When it comes to issues of flooding, I think we have a shared responsibility. The government alone cannot be held responsible for, managing floods, making sure that we have, enough resources to give to NADMO to make sure that we save people who are in flood distressed positions and all of that. I don't think that it is just a responsibility of state. If we all know that we are not supposed to build in flood-prone areas. Yes, we can blame the Ministry of Local Government. We can blame the planning officers. We can blame development control. But we need to also blame ourselves when we see that it is very obvious that where we are building is completely inappropriate. So I think we should look at the shared responsibility.
But Tony, we've always been talking about shared responsibility, but we vote for people. We put our taxes behind institutions. We have laws, and we've elected some people to ensure that these laws are used to bring sanctity into the environment. So yes, it's a collective responsibility, but don't you think that there are a group of people, institutions who have really gone to sleep and have resulted in these things continuously happening?
I agree with you to an extent, but I think that we need to also look at the other side of the story. Recently, we had conversations about the spillage of the dam at Wager.
Yeah.
And I raised the issue that 25 years ago, everybody talked about the fact that we were not supposed to build along, those floodplains. I have a personal encounter with somebody who brought me some drawings to do for them, in that area, and I informed the person that those are flood-prone areas, and they really went ahead to do their construction without the architect's advice. Subsequently, when I heard that those places were flooded and they were now blaming government that we should find a way of providing for temporary places for them to be able to hold up, I was surprised. It's not just the fact that the place floods, but if you have areas where when it floods, you have septic tanks flooding, wells flooding, and you have a mix of all sorts of kinds of water, then you know that it's not just the flooding, but post-flooding, you have issues to do with infections, cholera, and all of that. So that is one side of the story. The other side of the story, which you are telling, which I still agree with you, has to do with government responsibility. And we need to look into that. Every year, we spend excess of $200 million doing drainage in Accra. But the floods keep getting worse. I mean, along the Graphic Road and the banks of the Odo, we will build around the time when it is dry season. But then when it starts raining and the whole place gets flooded, we can't blame anybody else. We shouldn't have been there. And it is very difficult to insist that you want to demolish along the banks. I feel very sorry for the minister who is demolishing structures along the in the Ramsar site. We are not supposed to be there. But the laws we have in this country, we can live in forest reserves, but we cannot live in wildlife reserves. So we should be demolishing everything in those areas. But you know the kind of pressure and the way this country is so polarized when it comes to some of these issues. So when we talk about collective responsibility, it's everywhere. I mean, the public servants cannot act alone. But if they are acting and they get the support of the public, then we can serve the public better.
Okay, Tony. I want you to think about two things you think immediately we should do. Two things. One we should do immediately, and one in the long term to ensure that we build an utopian environment to make us live better within the city. But let me talk to David Ampofu. David is the founder of Channel 2 Communications. He is currently the CEO of the Upstream Petroleum Chamber. David is a man of many parts and the main work I've done with David has been on fixing the urban mess, and he's very passionate about the environment. David, 10 years ago we were talking about it, about this same issue. 10 years on, the problem hasn't changed much.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. No, you're right, isn't it? I've been listening to you. I mean, has anything changed? I mean, I don't even know whether the answer is yes or no, really. Do you? Could that be a starting point that we just, if you like, begin to look in more detail at what has evolved over the years? Flooding has been with us for a while. We know that. I mean, June said it stands out because of the explosion, but the phenomenon of flooding, essentially drowning people and the dust. And you're right, we've done quite a bit of work, and yet I don't know, it's a good question. As I was listening to you, I was thinking, that maybe find out that is it any different, so that perhaps we can learn some lessons, or we can say, okay, look, we've been doing this all this time, so that's a good starting point. I would say that. And maybe when you have an occasion like June said, it gives us a chance for that kind of reflection.
You know, around June 3rd, we carried a report from the Lakeside area. 2 people lost their lives on the Lakeside Bridge. 2 weeks ago when it rained, about 4 people lost their lives in the same location. So June 3rd, around that location was about 2. Now it's double.
Wow. I mean, and we know in a basic sense, don't let's talk about too many things, that we must not block waterways. And how this is for at one. I mean, look, this is multiple stuff. It's not just because of one thing. And yet, there are things that we can all do. But the fact still remains, I like that you pointed it out, that it is the job of government, local government. We must understand that, strengthen them, give them the resources, supervise, and ensure that work gets done. I never accept it when I hear people say we must all take the blame. My brother, we don't all have to take the blame. And so, I know you or somebody said it earlier perfectly, that we hire people to do this work and look after them as best as we can. So we have some work to do, really. I mean, look, we know it. So each year, at least, maybe we just have a practice where, like how we have our festivals and so on, where the rain is about to come. So what is the pre-rain festival? Do you understand me? So maybe it's a time of cleaning. It's a time of awareness of less plastic. It's a time of asking your assemblyman what he's doing. Just do this, in the lead to the rain. That's a kind of preparation.
Now, my question to you: you've done this for years. You were journalist of the year before I was born. So you've seen the changing faces of our urban space. Over the past 10 years, we've worked together. Where do you think we should go from here?
Look, it's hard for me to say. All I'll say is that government must work, must be made to work. We must and we must contribute to it, as in pointing it out when we think things are not working. But we really, really, really have to understand that people have possibilities, the buck stops in certain places, and those places must be held accountable. It must be. I mean, this is also a sanitation issue, by the way. It's water and sanitation. And then you have the cholera bit that pops up also every now and then. So, I mean, I don't think that the town is not planned. I'm sure there are excellent plans, in the places where they were done. I don't know, the city is just growing faster than we've been able to keep up with it. Look at the expansion, the rows of containers along the edges, left, right, center. And then the whole thing about when you want to relocate people, a certain sensitivity towards that. Oh, you are not being reasonable. Why are you making people suffer? Oh, no. We can't do that. You see what I mean? So,
yeah.
And you're in media. You have to try and make sure that the conversation on it is good. The whole media these days is all conversation is allowed. So some people just come, they don't teach us anything. And they may have even more time than those from whom we can learn something. So that's why you have media, traditional media. You have to help point people down certain ways. Like what you've done today on this program. You're asking me what I can do. Believe me, it's in your hands. Media.
Well, David, on that, maybe we should have a conversation and bring fixing the urban mess back.
I think you
continue
fixing the urban mess has never stopped in a way, isn't it? But you're right, we should.
Yeah. Now, Tony, let me come to you. Where do we go from here?
This conversation has been going on for ages. I published an article in 2008. Every year I read it, it's as if we published it yesterday. So most of the solutions that we have are long-termish. But let me look at some of the short-term solutions. One of the first things that we need to do is to be able to improve our flood warning solution. You see, if you look at the very serious flooding that we have had along the coastal areas, they happen around 6:37 up to about 9 p.m. Those period is when you get high flood, for what you call high tide.
where you have the sea coming a bit inland. So the moment there is rain and stormwater cannot exit into the sea, you realize that it starts backing up, and so it's very difficult to manage. And then also, because it's at night, it's very difficult to be able to find ways of doing emergency response. So that takes me to the second short-term plan. We need a very comprehensive emergency response plan. You see, we have politicized NADMO. So we get people, appointed by political officers, to such positions who may not necessarily be very technical. I think it is time for us to put round pegs in round holes, and then equip them properly when it comes to some of these things. We should have dinghies. We should be able to map up the area and know buildings that, within low-lying areas, which can easily flood, and then give preference to buildings that are in such areas. So we need to be able to look at that. In the medium and long-term plans, one of the things that I'm very happy about is this government attempts to restore wetlands. They shouldn't just demolish the buildings. They should cut away all foreign materials and make sure that the wetlands restore itself, so that we can have birds, and fish and all of that, and get the fauna in place.
So the demolition must come with evacuation of the demolished material.
Yes, evacuation of the evacuated. We should evacuate the material. That's very important. So that is one. The other thing has to do with something which has become a cliche, which we need to be very careful and make sure that we actually actualize it. Sustainable planning solution. Anytime we talk about it, it's as if it's become a cliche. But we have come to the point where we should look at sustainable planning, write it in our laws, make sure that we train our staff at the Ministry of Local Government for them to understand it, so that they can involve that in development control. So that's very key. The other things which, it's difficult for every government to be able to achieve 100% is infrastructure improvement. It's about drainage. It's about covered gutters. It's about making sure that we build our roads and our bridges and all of that, devoid of silting. So all of that is part of the long-term solution. Now, we also have to start looking at climate resilient design. A lot of our designs we carry out, we end up having a very large mass concrete driveways that is paved. In fact, sometimes you have, these tiled driveways which makes the ground impermeable. It is time to make sure that we give incentive to people who design houses and have more greens, so that we can improve percolation and reduce runoff. We have to look at flood-resistant construction in areas that are prone to flooding, so that if we could have some of their buildings on stilts and things like that, we have to be scientific about it.
So there are areas, no matter what we do, people have to settle there. So we need to change the way we build and re-engineer our houses to be able to exist within those environments.
That is doable. I think we should be able to start thinking along those lines.
Thank you so much, Tony, for joining us this morning and sharing your thoughts with us. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Tony Asare is the president of the Ghana Institute of Architects. He's an architect with years of experience. And David spent some time with us, not on his show, Time with David, but on the Super Morning Show. David Ampofo shared some time with us